Yes, sir. You're audible.
Thanks, Chandrasekhar. So once again, a very good morning to all of you. And of course, many congratulations for completing your Modern Application Development 1 course. Whether you would have completed it in the September term or in the Jan 2022 term. Okay, there have been some phases, I guess, we used to interact a lot during the September live sessions. And there are, I guess, some students who have completed their MAD 1 course in the Jan term. Okay. Okay, all right. So I just want to get a raw idea that how many of you have already watched the orientation session for Modern Application Development 2 course, just to get a brief idea of what this course is all about. Yeah, you can raise your hands in case you have watched it. Okay, quite a many people have already watched that session. All right, great. Thanks. You can now lower your hands. Thank you. But still, I guess there is a small percentage of people who have still not watched that orientation session. So just for their reference, I would just like to, give a brief idea of about this course and what you can basically expect. So as you have already completed, all of you would have already completed Modern Application Development 1 course either in September 2021 term and in January 2022 term in order to enroll into this the next part of it, the Modern Application Development 2 course. So what we did in MAD 1 is that our large focus was on the backend, that how do we basically build the backends. So we used the Flask framework there. We used SQLite as a data storage, and pretty much everything we have done on the backend in the Modern Application Development 1 course. There was a small component, of course, that is required in order to design some, at least a small, or I would say a less interactive front end that we did using HTML, CSS, a little bit of Bootstrap, or a little bit of JavaScript as well. However, JavaScript was not a part, or I would say was not meant to be a part of the Modern Application Development 1 course. There was a reason for that, because we are going to focus a large or a major component of this Modern Application Development 2 course is going to focus around JavaScript only. So we'll be deep diving into JavaScript concepts, and we'll be seeing that what all concepts or what all features this language provides us, for developing web applications. Apart from that, we will also be using a JavaScript reactive framework called Vue.js for this course in order to develop the interactive front ends. So as I have mentioned that in MAD 1, the focus was on the backend. We tried to build some, backends by writing some business logic. But this time, our major component of this entire course is going to focus a lot on the front end part of it, like how do we design interactive front ends. And we will be using Vue.js as a JavaScript reactive framework for it. Of course, the backend, we will be using Flask in the form of APIs, and we'll be doing several other steps that we'll see going forward into this course. So this was just a general outline of what this course is all about. So, we would be happy to answer any questions, any generic questions that you may have with respect to this course. So since this is the first session for this, for the start of this term for this Modern Application Development 2 course, the last session got postponed as I guess many of you didn't get the access to the course content. So there was no meaning of conducting that session on Tuesday. So today on Saturday is basically the first session of this term for this particular course. Okay, so one last thing. I'm Abhishek and Narendra. So we are basically the course instructors for this Modern Application Development course. We'll be there throughout the live sessions for helping you out. And of course, we'll also be available in the Discord forum. In case you have any queries, you can post there, and we'll be happy to help you out in whatever way, in whatever possible way we can. Will we be having solve with a session for MAD 2? Yes, definitely we'll be having such sessions here as well.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, can you give a brief idea regarding the projects that we will be having in MAD 2?
Okay, so projects. So basically what we are planning to do is that the project that was given in January 2022 term, you will be supposed to build something on top of it. So maybe if you would have interacted with some of your peers who basically opted for the modern application development 2 course in the Jet term itself, you would see that they were asked to build an advanced flashcard application. So you were given a basic flashcard application in the September term, but in January we just tried to update that so that you can basically learn and build on top of it. So this time we are going to follow up on the Jan 2022 term. So the project given was a quantified self application, and this time there will be something on top of it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Is there any other question that anyone have right now at this moment? Okay, there seems to be no questions. All right, in that case, we would like to start, but with what we have planned for this session. So currently the plan is that I expect that the JavaScript might be a new language for all of you, or majority of you who are joined in this live session. So our focus will be on the basics of JavaScript. Even the lectures itself, the theory lectures itself, they will be more practical oriented. You will be given code snippets and examples and their demonstration during those lectures as well. And of course, screencast would definitely be there in order to help you out with some more or advanced practical stuff. So today the idea is that we will be walking through all of the activity and practice questions for the week 1. It would also help you in order to understand the week 1 content. In case you have any doubts, you can definitely post those questions here in the live sessions. Okay, so the other thing I want to emphasize here is that it would be really great if we can make all of these live sessions interactive. So interactive means, we would expect all of you to, play a major role or, participate in all of these live sessions. That means if any of your peer has any query, it would be great to see if any one of you comes up or steps up in order to answer his or her query. That would be really great to see going forward. Not only in live sessions, it would be greatly appreciated in discourse forum, in discussion forum as well. All right, so if there is no other question from anyone else, then I would like to share my screen and we will start with activity questions for this week 1. But before that, I also want to just get a raw idea when we'll be getting a project statement. So this time we'll try to make it available to you as soon as possible. We are trying to publish it by the end of the week 4 or 5, but we are still working on it. Let's see that how soon we can publish it, but this time we will definitely try to publish it up a bit sooner than we did in the last 2 months. Okay, so since we are already on Saturday, may I know that how many of you have already finished watching lectures for week 1? There were about 6 lectures, if I'm not wrong. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, nice. A good percentage of the participation into this session have already watched the lectures. Great. Okay, so have you all tried solving the activity or practice questions? Is there anyone who has completed all of the activity and practice questions?
Yes, completed.
Oh wow, great, nice.
Yes, sir, completed.
So I hope we would be able to make this session more interactive. If all all of you have already watched those lectures and attempted those questions as well. So it will just be a revision kind of thing for you. But yes, those who are trying it for the first time, it would be a good experience for them as well. Okay. So just give me a minute. So can someone please confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Just a second. Let me just log in. Yeah, all right. So we'll move on to the first set of this weekly question set. And we'll start with the AQ 1.1 category. There will be around 5 or 6 questions in this category. So we'll go through each of those questions one by one. Chandrasekhar, do you have anything to say?
No, sir, no. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So as I have already mentioned that we would expect all of you to be participating in these sessions. That means if you can contribute, or if you voluntarily want to answer any questions, so please feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself and start discussing the stuff. So yeah, here is the first question: that what does Jamstack stand for? So would anybody like to answer this question?
It's Java API markup.
It's JavaScript API and markup.
Yeah, correct. So it is JavaScript API and markup. So what we usually do in this type of model, in this type of stack, is that we basically build our application using JavaScript, and we use API in order to fetch data. So that means we use API in order to fetch data for us, and we somehow use that data in our markup to present the web page or the HTML to the user. So this is kind of a reliable stack, which is easily scalable as well in some ways. And yeah, we'll be studying more about it going forward into the course. So yeah, who coined the term Jamstack? Well, not something that you need to remember all of the times, but anyways.
Matthias Billman.
Yeah, all right, that's the correct answer. So there is no explanation required for this. Yes, we can move on to the next part. So what does PWA stand for in the context of an app? I would like to have a discussion on this question as well, that what actually PWA mean.
So progressive web app.
Yeah, progressive web app. So would anyone like to explain that what does this term PWA mean? So we have been studying that how to develop web applications, but this is something different. This says that progressive web app. So is there anything else that this type of application provide to the users? Okay, all right. So if we talk about the web applications, so in order to access web applications, what you require is you basically require a browser, and you also require an active internet connection in order to access any web application that is available on the web or on the internet. Right. But what this progressive web app does is this basically makes the web application installable on your device. Let's say you would have seen quite a many times that there are many web applications who provide add to desktop feature on their application. For example, if there is anything, or if this app would be a PWA, I would be getting an option here that says that would say that add to desktop kind of a feature, or that kind of functionality. So what it does is it basically installs the version of that web application in our systems, so that that application can be accessed without using internet connection at all. So it does some level of caching, so that it can cache the frequent information or the recent information that is visited by the users. It usually caches those things so that user doesn't need to be always active on the internet in order to access that web application. It also provides a native experience to the user. It feels like that you are basically running a desktop app if you are trying it on desktop, or if you have installed that application on your mobile phone, it would give you a feel of native app. Let's say an Android app, that you are just working on a mobile Android app, if you are using an Android smartphone. So this is basically PWA mean. We will also see that we'll read more about it in details going forward into this course. But for now, yes, it stands for progressive web app. So here is the another term that we'll be using quite a many times in this course, that is SPA. Again, anybody else would like to answer this question? Anyone?
Single
I
page
think
app.
it's single page app.
Single page application, correct? Nice. A brief explanation or a brief concept that what SPA is. Would anyone be interested in doing so? Okay. So a single page application. So as the name suggests, it is itself a single page. So let me just talk about the typical websites that we usually see in our daily to daily lives. For example, if I am going here, let's not talk about this type of web application. Let's take any standard web application example. Let's say Google Chrome, right? Or let's say I'm using Edge and I open any of the websites here. Let's say I open Discourse, or I'm not even sure about Discourse. Any other app, let's say any standard. So what happens that whenever you click on any enter link or whenever you click on any button, that is supposed or that is meant to navigate or to take the user to a different page. So what usually happens is that the entire page refreshes. So what you would see is that whenever you click on a link or whenever you click on a button that is supposed to navigate the user to a different page or to a different section somewhere, this reload icon, this would come into action. And this would actually refresh the entire page so that it can get the HTML for the next page and can present it to the user, so that user can view it. So what is happening here is that for each navigation doesn't matter, what the change is. For example, it could be a smallest of change itself. For example, there is a page, let's say contact.html, and there is a page contact1.html, and there are minimal changes in between both of those pages. But still, if you are trying to navigate between these two pages, the entire screen of the browser will get refreshed. So the idea in an SPA is, in single page application, is that we really do not need to load the entire page in case a user wants to navigate to some different section or to some different page of the same web application. So what we usually do is we fetch the data asynchronously there. That means the moment user clicks on that button or the moment user clicks on that enter link, what we do is we basically send a request to the backend, and we start fetching data asynchronously. And as soon as we get that data, we present it onto the user screen. But what happens is we didn't refresh the entire page. We just changed the components or some sections of that page. For example, if I would like to get back to that contact or contact1.html, or page instead, not HTML, if there are minimal changes, so what we would do is we would just like to update those sections which require changes. We would leave everything else as it is. So let me just give you an example for this. What I say, this SPA is, for example, if I'm typing this IITM, so what I'm getting is I am getting a lot of suggestions here. So do you think are all of these suggestions stored in my computer? Are they stored in my browser?
No, sir.
Sorry?
No, they are not.
No, sir.
Yeah, they are not. So how I'm getting these suggestions? How this browser is getting me these suggestions? Any idea?
So from browser history.
From browser history. Okay, let's say you use a browser for the very first time. There is no history at all, and you start typing something. Will you still get suggestions?
Yeah, I think it is generating asynchronously, like you said.
Exactly. So what is happening here is it is making use of AJAX. Right. The moment I type something from my keyboard into this search box, what it does is it takes that character, it sends a request to the backend and tries to fetch all of the keywords that matches that character, whatever I have typed in that input text box. But it happens, so fast that the user doesn't even know that if a request has been sent to the backend and data is being fetched. It happens so flawless. Right. The same thing will be happening in case of SPAs as well. So what will happen is the moment you click on that button, it will send the request to the backend. The data fetch will be so fast that the page will come automatically or very fast on the user screen, and the page will not be entirely refreshed. So it will be, I would say a kind of boon for the user experience. That means user is able to basically navigate between multiple pages so fast without even refreshing the entire page. So we will also be, developing some kind of SPAs in this in this course, when we'll start studying about few frameworks and some of its libraries. So we'll come on to this part and we'll see that how these type of apps can be done. So yeah, the answer to this question is that what does SPA stand for in the context of an application? It's basically single page app, as all of you would know. I just wanted to give you a brief outline that what does this term actually mean. So these two terms, PWA and SPA, these are two interesting terms that we'll be learning about in this course going forward. Okay. So yeah, this is, I guess, numerical answer type question. So what is the default port number used by a Flask application? I hope all of you will be able to answer it.
5,000.
5,000. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, is there any doubt? Anyone having any doubt from this category AQ 1.1?
No, sir.
Okay, great. I guess we can move to the next section. So we'll go on to AQ 1.2 category. Okay, so I guess this lecture talks a little bit about applets. Would anybody of you would like to talk about applets? What are they?
So pieces of Java that can be implemented in HTML.
Okay, correct. So basically, if you talk about the origins of JavaScript itself, so JavaScript itself was designed for supporting applets in the browsers. So what an applet is, it is basically a small application that is powered by Java, or I would say that is powered by JVM in the browsers. And what we can basically do with the help of applets is that we can run a small application inside a web page. If Java is installed, if Java is supported by your browsers. Nowadays, all of the major browsers, all of the famous browsers, they have already taken back their supports for supporting the, JVM or these applets. So they do not work anymore on some browsers like Google Chrome. I hope they don't even work on, Edge, the browser that I'm using right now. I'm not even sure about Mozilla Firefox, if it still works. But yeah, for Google, I'm sure that the support has been taken off. So yeah, as I mentioned, that the applets are basically a small application that can be run, or that can be run on a web page. For example, if we talk about a very, very simple example, let's say you want to create a calculator on a web page. If I will ask you this question today, I hope many of you are going to say that we can easily do it using JavaScript. What's difficult in that? What's new in that? But if we talk about the times when JavaScript was not that popular, like when JavaScript was evolving, or when it was just came into existence. So that time applets were used in order to develop such kind of interactive components. I would say, yeah, interactive, because calculator is something that will be interacting with the user in some sense. But what it will require is, it will require a JVM. Of course, I hope you know that basically if you need to run a Java program, you need to have JVM. So what we usually do is we used to embed applet codes inside the HTML pages, and applet, as I have already told, it's a small application that is written in Java. That is used to perform some interactive functionalities on the web page. But again, I would like to mention it that many of the browsers have already taken their support off, and they do not support applets anymore. So this question was just given for your knowledge. In case you want to deep dive into it, you can definitely go on to study more about it. If any one of you have already studied Java, or maybe studying Java, so you would know that what happens is, in order to run a Java program, we need to first convert it into a .class file. Firstly, we create a .java file by writing some code in it, by writing some classes. And then what we do is we compile that and we convert, or we get a .class file, and we basically run that .class file in order to see the output, whatever that Java program generates. So what happens is, in this case, if you want to put an applet onto your web page, you usually don't keep what you call as .java file. You have to keep the compiled version of it. That is the .class file. So applets are basically, they are not standalone programs. So I'm talking a little bit of technical things here. But in case you have already studied Java, you would know that that the public class of that Java program, it must have a main function. But in case of applets, it doesn't have any main function. So that's why I'm saying that they are not standalone programs. Well, okay, I'll just stop here. If you want, you can read more about it, but that doesn't carry any weightage in the context of what we are studying here. This is just a concept that was used in the earlier times, but JavaScript has completely overtaken here. It is being used most widely these days, and yeah, means applets are something that we can say are obsolete. So the question says that which of the following is the correct way to embed an applet in an HTML document, assuming that the Java bytecode applet demo.class is kept in the same directory as the HTML document. So anybody of you would like to answer this question? What could be the possible answer for this question?
Option 1.
Yeah, option 1.
Option. So both should work.
Yeah, both should work. So the reason is that, as I mentioned, that in this applet tag, what we are required to do is we are required to provide the path of the .class file of the compiled Java file. So it is automatically expecting us that we will be providing a path to .class file. So if you write this extension or not, it will automatically be considered .class. So both of these code snippets would work. So that's why the answer would be both 1 and 2. The second question is that what is the following, which of the following is the correct usage of alt attribute in the applet tag in an HTML document? So I hope you all know that what alt tag means in an IMG tag. Alt attribute means in IMG tag, but do you know about the usage of it in case of an applet tag?
I think it solves the alternate text in case of that functionality is not available in the browser.
Exactly. So in case Java is not supported in the browser, in that case, you can use this alt attribute in order to show whatever text you want to show to the user. For example, in case of JavaScript, let's say if someone has disabled JavaScript in your browser, you can use no script tab in order to show some message. Let's say enable JavaScript in your browser in order to access this application, some kind of those things. Yeah. So it is used to display alternative text in case the browser does not support Java. Yeah, that's the correct purpose or the usage of alt attribute.
Sir, why the second case is not correct, sir? If browser is disabled, then
we are talking about applets. We are not talking about JavaScript. So second question is almost related to JavaScript.
Okay.
Okay, so which of the following statements is true regarding JavaScript? Okay, let me tell you, one interesting thing, that JavaScript is, I would say, that most loved language across all of the web developers, or I would say in the context of web development, but it is also the most hated language, I would also say. Okay, so it's better if you, focus on learning the concepts, right? Once you try to understand that how a JavaScript program works or how does it execute, it would be more and more interesting for you. But in case you are facing any difficulties, please get back to us. Please get back to us in the live sessions or via discussion forums. We will try to help you in the best possible way we can. But yeah, this language is basically a very powerful language, and I would say yes, this has evolved into something really, really powerful than what it was meant to be. So if we go back, if we go 20 or 25 years back and we see that what is JavaScript, it was nothing, right? But if today someone will ask you a question that what is JavaScript, it is, you can even write an entire application with the help of JavaScript, right? It is that much powerful. So yeah, we are going to study a lot more about it in the course. The first 2 weeks of this course will entirely be focused on JavaScript and its concepts. So yeah, it's better if you pay attention in the live sessions or watch the lectures very closely. And the most important thing is that try the stuff yourself, try the programs yourself, whatever have been demonstrated in the lectures. Just try those things yourself as well. In case you require the reference links that were used in the lectures, please let us know. We'll provide you the link of those in the discussion forums. Yeah. So which of the following statements is true regarding JavaScript? Yes. So anybody of you would like to answer this question?
The first two.
Okay. JavaScript can be used for DOM manipulation. All right. Being a client-side scripting language, it reduces the load on the server. JavaScript cannot be used in the backend. So you said that the first two, but what
So the other two, I'm not sure about.
about the third?
I'm not sure.
Sir,
Okay.
we can use Node JavaScript for designing servers. So I think it can be used in the backend.
Correct. It can.
Yes, sir, that
That's
is
why third option is not correct. So first option is correct because we use JavaScript a lot for DOM manipulation. But I mean by DOM manipulation is, let's say, on the click of a button, you want to change the text of of some paragraph somewhere on the same page, or maybe try to navigate a user to a different page. All of these things can be done using JavaScript. So this is basically termed as DOM manipulation. That means you are trying to manipulate the document object model of the current page. And being a client-side scripting language, that means everything, since browser understands JavaScript, so it is being executed on the client end. That means it is also reducing the load on the server. If we talk about the Jinja 2 templating that we used in the NAD1 course, so we used templating engine as Jinja. What used to happen was that every rendering, it means whatever variables we are providing to your Jinja 2 templates, those used to get rendered on the backend itself. So it requires some resources or some amount of computation to be performed on the backend side before it basically sends out the complete plain HTML to the browser. Please note here, it sends the complete, or I would say plain HTML to the browser, and browser just have to render them. But if we use languages like JavaScript, so browser will be able to execute those JavaScript and will be able to reduce some amount of load from the backend. JavaScript cannot be used in the backend, as one of you have already answered that there are things like Node.js, which can be used in order to develop or implement the backends for the applications using JavaScript. So if we talk about which of the following can be considered as advantages of JavaScript language. Yes.
So I think DOM manipulation and asynchronous.
all of the above.
All of them.
Yeah, correct. All of the above is basically the answer. Of course, DOM manipulation is something that we requires a lot, even in case we are trying to develop a static web application or some static web pages that are simply written using HTML. If we have some JavaScript component in it, so it would be better for the user experience, for the user interactivity. Asynchronous processing is something that we'll be looking at going forward, maybe in the next couple of weeks. Event loop, I'm also hoping that if you have started watching week 2 lectures, so you would get a basic idea that what actually event loop is. We'll be discussing more about it in the next week's live session. So for as of now, all of the above is basically the answer to this question.
What is event loop?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that it would be better if you can first watch the week 2 lectures. It has been discussed in those lectures. I would not like to touch upon on this topic right now because it itself is a vast topic, and I think we still have a lot more questions to go through. So yeah, it would be better if you have some context after watching those lectures, then probably we can discuss and take any doubts that you have. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. So, which of the following is true regarding Java applets? Yeah. So it is a special program that can be done by a browser's Java virtual machine. Yes, that's the correct option, as we have already discussed that it is basically a small application in itself that is powered by browser's GPU in order to be run inside a browser. It is a programming language. So is Java applet a programming language? Remember, we are talking about applets, not Java.
No, sir. No, sir.
Yeah, it's not a programming language, so it's not a correct option. Applets are written in Java. Definitely they are.
That is correct. Yeah.
It can be embedded in HTML documents. That's what they are meant for.
Correct.
Okay. So applet class needs to be narrated while writing Java applets, but okay, let's leave it as of now. Which of the following web browsers evolved from Netscape Navigator?
Mozilla.
Yeah, it's Firefox. Okay. I'm hoping that you were also supposed to say, you were also meant to say Mozilla Firefox. Your voice was breaking that time, but yeah, I guess that's okay. So yeah, we are done with AQ 1.2 category as well. So does anybody has any questions till now, till AQ 1.2?
Good morning.
Yeah.
So if JavaScript is not a language, then it will need some language to work upon.
No, JavaScript is a language. Sorry, which question you are referring to? I didn't get it. JavaScript is a language, is a programming language.
So above we did not choose that. Just scroll up.
It was Java applet.
The applet.
Java. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Java applet. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone else?
So Java applet and JavaScript are two different things.
Sorry.
Java applet and JavaScript are two different things.
Yeah, they are two different things.
So applet uses JavaScript. Is it like that, or it's completely different?
No, Java applet is completely different. As we have already discussed, it is a small program.
That is powered by Java. So it means that
No,
Java,
that is not powered by JavaScript. It is a program that is written in Java, and JavaScript can be used in order to interact with that part. It basically acted as a glue language between the HTML part and that what I say, that applet part of the language. They both are completely different.
Sir, applets are written in Java, not in JavaScript.
Yes, they are written in Java. Yeah, correct.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Shall we move to the next category? If everyone of you is satisfied till now. Okay,
Yes,
I
sir.
hope we can. Okay, so yeah, we are on the AQ 1.3 category. So which of the following encoding does a JavaScript engine use in general? So yeah, if you have already watched lectures, you would be able to answer this.
It's UTF
16.
Correct, it's UTF 16. Well, the difference between UTF 8, 16 and 32, I guess it was already covered in MAD 1 lecture. But in case any one of you would like to revise that, we can do that right now as well. Is anybody interested in discussing the differences between the three? Yeah, Bhavya.
Sir, the level of encoding differs, like the number of bytes each one allocates.
Got it.
Like UTF 8 allows for 8-byte encoding, UTF 16 allows for
8 bytes?
8 bits.
Okay.
UTF 16 allows for 16 bits and 32 allows for 32 bits.
Okay, so if I talk about the capacity of each of these encoding techniques, if you say that UTF 8 is capable of encoding a given character with the help of 8 bits,
So
at the same time,
2 to the power 8.
Okay, so that means it's the maximum number of characters that UTF 8 can encode, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about UTF 16?
So same 2 to the power 16.
Okay, and UTF 32 to power 32, right?
Yes, sir.
Does anybody has a different opinion?
No, sir.
UTF 16 is variable. So
Okay.
that's variable in size. It's not fixed one. It is not going to take always 16 bit.
Correct. So yeah, this is the confusion that most of the people have. Let me just try to clear it right away. See, these two encodings, UTF 8 and UTF 16, these two are variable length encodings. So what happens is that if, as the name suggests, UTF 8, it does not mean that it can encode a maximum number of 2 power 8 characters. That is not correct. What happens is that the minimum number of bits that are required to encode a given character in this particular encoding requires 8 bits. That means in case you want to encode a digit 0, it would require a minimum of 8 bits if you are using UTF 8 as your encoding. At the same time, if we are talking about UTF 16, it requires a minimum of 16 bits or 2 bytes in order to encode a given character. If we talk about UTF 32, it requires a minimum of 32 bits in order to encode a given character. Now, I mentioned that UTF 8 and 16 are variable length encodings. What do I mean by that is, the minimum number of bits required by these encodings are 8 and 16, but they can even go beyond that. For example, UTF-8 can encode a given character either using 8 bits, 16 bits, or 32 bits. So remember, it is a variable length encoding and is capable of encoding a given character using 8, 16, and 32 bits. Similarly, UTF-16 can encode a character using 16 or 32 bits, but UTF-32 is a fixed length encoding technique, and it will always use 32 bits in order to encode a given character. It doesn't matter, even if it is a digit 0 or if it is a character 8, whatever it is, it always requires 32 bits. So is that question clear? That it doesn't mean that UTF-8 is less capable of encoding characters than what are supported by UTF-16. All of these three are capable of encoding each and every character that exists this day. It's just a matter of number of bits that each of these encoding will require to encode that given character. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that difference clear?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Yes, it's
now-
like better memory utilization.
Yes, you can say, but now I would like to put a counter question here. That what do you think? Which is the most efficient encoding technique among these three?
I think UTF-8.
Depends on what the situation.
Can you please elaborate?
If most of the characters don't require that many memory, then we can do away with UTF-8 itself, or even ASCII.
No, I didn't get it. If browsers don't require that much memory, I couldn't quite get this explanation.
No, not browsers. I mean, say, suppose we are encoding something in UTF-8 or 16, but if there is no such requirement in going for UTF-16, and it can be, the encoding can be done with UTF-8.
No, what I'm saying is that each of these encoding techniques is capable of encoding each and every character that exists this day. So it's not like that if there is a character that cannot be encoded using UTF-8 and it can be done using UTF-16. Everything can be done using both.
Okay.
So in that case, which is most efficient among these three? Well, UTF-32, I hope most of you would definitely agree that it's definitely not the efficient encoding technique among the three. But what about UTF-8 and UTF-16?
UTF-8 because it is a low.
Shall I try?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
So ASCII characters require 8 bit. So if something is like that, suppose I'm dealing with only one language and I'm having suppose English and I want to represent those. So I will definitely go with UTF-8. But when I want to go for different languages, say Chinese, Marathi, Hindi, and all those, then definitely UTF-8 is not a good option. You need to go for the because the characters encoding requires more bits, because there is a large number, like in Sanskrit, we are having large number of characters. It is not
okay. If
possible
it does
to
not
fit all
require
those
8 bits, it may require 16 bits, but UTF-16 also requires 16 bits.
Yeah, but it's a variable length, no? So it depends upon
UTF-16 is also variable length.
Yeah, that is also variable length. So variable length compared with the fixed one, the variable length is much better.
Yeah, so the comparison is between two variable length encoding techniques. It is between UTF-8 and 16.
So if we are sticking with less number of characters to be represented, then definitely we will go with UTF-8. If you are not able to represent that using UTF-8, then we have to go for the UTF-16. Then in that case, UTF-32 will not be a good option, because already we are giving fixed 32 bits for every character to represent. So it depends upon the two, UTF-8 and 16, that depending upon your requirement, which one you will go for. I think
nice, Chandrasekhar. Yeah. So let me just try to elaborate a bit more. Well, your explanation is correct, but I would just like to add a few points. As Chandrasekhar has already mentioned, that it basically depends on the situation. It depends on the context. What are your requirements? Now, in order to give you an example so that you can understand it better. So there may be some language sets. I'm not very sure, but I'm just taking an example. Let's say Japanese. Let's say there is a language set called Japanese that requires 32 bits if you are using UTF-8 as the encoding scheme, and it requires 16 bits if you are using UTF-16. So in that case, which encoding scheme would you like to go? Let me repeat whatever I said. Japanese language is a set that requires 16 bits if you use UTF-16 encoding and requires 32 bits if you are using UTF-8. And you are developing your entire web application for this Japanese language set.
So then UTF-16.
So 16.
Definitely. UTF-16 would be best suited for you. So that's why it basically depends on the context. I just gave an example that Japanese, but I'm not really sure that if it is the correct example. You can research more about it. But yes, there are some language sets that require 32 bits in order to encode a single character using UTF-8. But at the same time, they require less number of bits if you go with UTF-16. So that is why it always depends on the needs, on the requirements, or on the context, on what type of application you want to design. Right? That's why a developer needs to research before whatever encoding scheme that they usually use. But yes, the most widely used is UTF-8, because if we talk about in India, most of the web applications are either built in English or Hindi, and UTF-8 is very well supported, or I would say most efficient for handling such languages. Yeah, so that's it. So this is the difference between the three, UTF-8, 16, and 30. I hope the difference is clear to all.
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Okay, so I hope we are now into a little bit of JavaScript programming. We are going to get some JavaScript output questions. So what will be the output on console if the following JavaScript program is executed using command line?
5.
So there are four options: 5, undefined, null, and preference error.
It will show error because
It's first one 5.
block scope.
Okay, it's 5. I'm able to hear some different answers as well. Can you please try to speak a bit louder?
Block scope. Variable X is defined within a block.
Okay.
Sorry, late and constants are having the block scope. Okay. So here it will be able to print. It will give the value 5.
Okay. Does everyone agree that the answer to this program would be 5? The output to this program would be 5?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, correct. It would be 5 because variables that are declared using where keyword, they are having functional scope. If the same would have been done using some other keywords that are defined in ES6 specification, the output would have been something different.
So
maybe we'll talk about this functional scope and block level scope in one of the Solve with Instructor sessions that we will have in next week. That would be a more interesting session for you.
So can we say where has a global scope?
No, you cannot say.
Okay.
It's a functional scope.
All three are having global scope. They support the global scope. But
Yes,
like
definitely.
within a block, only late and constant, they do not allow the outside the block, but where allows. In that sense, can we say that is what I wanted to ask.
Well, of course, for your understanding, you can say that, but again, I would like to emphasize that it is having functional scope. The reason is that if you try to create a variable using where inside a function body, and if you try to access that variable outside that function body, you won't be able to.
Yes, sir.
So yes, these things would get more clear when we'll get into a live coding session. That would be an interesting one. So which of the following operators is used to avoid coercion in JavaScript language?
Option C.
Triple equal.
Triple equals to, correct? So sorry. Okay, I hope you were saying that triple equals to was the option. Yeah, that's correct. So JavaScript is a weakly typed language. I'm not sure if it is a graded question, but okay, it is probably a but all right, that's fine. So which of the following have a block level scope in JavaScript language? As we were just discussing, I guess, in the second question, that let and const are having block level scopes. But if we talk about where, it has a functional level scope or a function level scope. So let and const are the keywords that were defined in the ES6 specification. And yeah, they are supposed to have block level scope. And we will also try to use let and const as much as possible as we can. We'll try to use const as much as possible. So the priority should be const If the const is not suitable for our needs, we will try to use let, and we'll try or we will try avoiding the usage of where keyword in our programs as much as we can. Okay, so what is ECMAScript?
So the original JavaScript, I mean the JavaScript when it was standardized.
Okay, all right. So it is a JavaScript standard, that is for sure a correct answer to this question. It's a markup language. It's definitely not. It was designed to ensure the interpretability of web pages across the browsers. That is also a correct answer. As we know that JavaScript itself is based on ECMA. So there were some reasons that ECMAScript, it was handed over to some different organization so that they can come up with a language called JavaScript. So that previously there used to be different browsers, and all of those browsers used to support multiple different things. So just in order to provide or ensure that portability among all of the browsers, there were some measures that were taken, and ECMAScript and JavaScript, they played a major role in that. So yeah, C option is also a correct answer to this question. So, well, I'm not sure, so that's fine. So there used to be some softwares, I'm not able to recall their names currently, because there used to be a browser that was designed by Microsoft. There used to be a browser that was designed by Apple. So they all used to have some different features, and each of those browsers doesn't support the other browser's features. So that is why this came in. And JavaScript is, of course, that is pretty much supported by each browser this time. So yeah, I'll just click on check answers. All right, so we are done with this AQ 1.3 category as well. Does anybody has any questions till now? Anyone?
No, sir.
Okay, thanks. We'll move on to the next category, AQ 1.4. Okay, so which of the following is not a reserved word in JavaScript language? So those who have studied languages like C, C++, or Java, they might be a bit confused, but yeah, they need not be. Yeah, it is int. So int is a keyword for languages like C, C++, or Java, like I mentioned. So yeah, const is used to create a block level variable. While is a loop, else is something that comes under conditional blocks. So which of the following is not a valid literal in JavaScript? Again, those who are coming from Python might be having a slight difficulty in answering this question.
Third one, sir. True.
Third one. So if we talk about Python, so this would be a valid literal, but since we are now working on JavaScript, so JavaScript also has this concept of booleans, or this data type, or we would say, yeah, kind of data type. So it also supports true and false, but the fact is that all of those letters must be in lowercase. But here we can see that T is in uppercase. That is a Boolean value supported in Python language, not in JavaScript. Again, something related to C++ or JavaScript. Which of the following is not a primitive data type in JavaScript language? String is a primitive data type. Number is also there. Boolean is also there. But long int is something that is supported in C++, not in JavaScript.
That's a begin is a part of JavaScript, right?
No.
No.
JavaScript doesn't have any long int begin.
Okay. Just numbers. Because numbers. Int, because in Sir's lecture, int was not mentioned there. So
sorry, what was not mentioned?
Int, int.
Yeah, int is not supported. Int is not there in JavaScript at all.
Okay.
So these keywords are basically coming in from languages like C++. Int, long int, these things.
In previous questions, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. No, that's it. Sorry, I got confused. Not a reserve word. Okay. That's it. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. So which of the following is not a reserved word in JavaScript? So the options are def, let, const, yield. So of course, the confusion might be between def and yield. But yes, def is basically the answer. Yield is also a keyword in JavaScript, we'll see its usage. Def is something that is used to define functions in Python language. Okay, so which of the following is true regarding primitive data types in JavaScript? Anybody of you would like to answer? Yes, anyone?
Sir, undefined and null are primitive data types.
Okay, all right, correct. So number is also a primitive data type, as we see. I guess we saw it in one of the previous questions that we saw. Yeah, here for example. So the confusion is between the first two options. So int is a primitive data type. The very first thing is that int is not even there in JavaScript, so that cannot be a correct option. Now, if we talk about first option, yes. So the primitive data types, if we talk about numbers, if we talk about strings, they are not treated as objects. Right. So first one is also a correct option here. So yeah, I guess someone gave it in the chat 134. That's the correct answer. Sneak it. Okay. Yeah. So we are done till AQ 1.4 category. Anybody having any questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay, we will move on to the next category, AQ 1.5. Okay, this is lecture. I guess I have already tried that. Okay, no issues here. So again, small JavaScript code. We are basically trying to create an object here. Remember, x equals to, whenever we use these curly braces, that means we are trying to create an object. What will be printed on console for the statement console.log x? What do you think? What will be shown?
So those brackets only.
Correct. It will be an empty object, nothing else. Okay, so in continuation of that, let's say instead of printing directly x on the console, if we try to print x.value, what do you think? What's going to happen? So undefined.
It is
something
undefined.
Correct. It is undefined because if you can see in this object that we have not defined any key value pairs, any properties. So if you will try to access any property that is not defined, it will implicitly give undefined as the output for me. So nan is something known as not a number. Means if you're trying to, let's say, multiply two strings, so in that case you will be getting nan. So JavaScript is itself I would say a weakly typed language. So even if the string has some numbers, it will try to convert those strings into numbers if it can. But if it cannot, then it will basically result in something like nan. That means not a number. Again, we'll see this in the live coding sessions that we'll have going forward. So what will be the output if the JavaScript program written below is executed? We are defining a constant variable and we are simply trying to print its value on the console. What do you think? What will happen?
So it will throw an error.
Right?
Because constant you are declaring, it must be initialized.
Correct. So it's this concept is basically not specific to JavaScript. It is being followed across programming languages, right? Whatever you see, that the const variable, it's something that needs to be initialized while declaration. You cannot, since it is not meant to be changed later on, it must be initialized at the time of declaration itself. So that's why it will throw a syntax error. Well, in JavaScript, you will see mainly three types of errors. One is syntax error. The other one is reference error. The other type of error that you can see is type error. Okay, we'll see at some point that if we can discuss the examples of each of these. But these are broadly three types of errors that you will encounter in JavaScript. Okay, so we already have one here. So consider the following code snippet. What will be the output of console.log x?
15.
So it will be 15.
15, correct. It's not defined using const. It's defined using let, and that can be very well changed later on. So it will be 15. So I'm not sure that most of you maybe feel comfortable with this question. So let me just try to give you a brief idea of what is happening in this question. Is in the very first line we are trying to create an object that identifier name is obj, and just treat JavaScript objects as Python dictionaries. What we do in Python dictionaries is we create key value pairs. In the same way, in JavaScript objects, we will create key value pairs. There will be some key and there will be some value associated with it. So in line number 1, we are doing something similar. We are trying to create an object which is having one key value pair. The key is color. The value to that key color is red. In second line, what we are doing is we are trying to add one more property in that existing object. The name of that property or the name of that key is change color, but the value of that key is not something like integer or something like number or string. It is basically a function which accepts a parameter color. Now again, it is just like Python. This whatever you will pass in color, that will be accepted as it is. That means it can be a number, it can be a string, it can even be an object or whatever it is. Now, whatever you get as this parameter, what you do is you assign that value that you receive as a parameter in the form of color to what? To this dot color. Now, what this dot color is? So this is something that refers to the calling object. This is what I would like to say right now. Again, when you will practice more and more JavaScript, you will understand what the correct purpose of this is. This is also a kind of reference. If you have studied languages like Java, you would understand what this is. So on a very broad level, on a very high level, I would like to say that this basically refers to the calling object. What is calling object? That we'll see in the third line of this program. Whatever value we get in color, what we are doing is we are assigning to this dot color. Now, this dot color is going to depend on what this is, what you meant by this. So now when we will come on to this third line, we will see that we are calling a method called change color. So we'll see that this is something that we have defined in the second line. What is the reference or what is the object we are calling it against? We are calling it with obj. So that means this will be replaced by obj here. And this statement will be replaced, or it will look like something obj dot color equals to color. That means whatever the value of color is, just take that value, just grab that value and assign it or put it inside obj dot color. What is obj? It's an object. What is color? It's a property of that object. Just consider it as a Python dictionary. Obj dot color, the value that you are getting is green. So that means previously the value of this color was red. Now it is changed to green. Remember this here would be interchanged with obj because I'm saying that this refers to the calling object in case of normal methods or functions. Again, please note this statement, normal functions or methods. I'm not talking about arrow functions. They have a different usage of this keyword inside them. How can we change a const object? So we are not trying to change the const object here. This object is still referencing to this memory location that is stored somewhere in the heap. What we are doing is we are changing the value of that location. We are not changing the reference. We can both change it from object to any other type. Yeah, correct. That means we cannot change the reference. You cannot write obj equals to 2 or obj equals to ITM, something like that. But you can make changes inside that object. Const object means this is an what I say, an constant reference. That means the reference cannot be changed. So, if you are aware with some concepts like pointer to const or const pointer, you would be able to get a better idea. But I don't want to get into those things as of now. Just consider it that obj is basically pointing to a memory reference somewhere, and this is the value that is stored in that memory. We cannot touch this obj reference. We cannot change it. The moment we'll try to do so, it will straight away give us an error. But you can always change the value that is kept at that particular memory location. This is what we are doing here.
Sir, here object location in memory, that will be the constant.
Sorry, I didn't. The reference will be constant.
Reference will be constant. We cannot change that.
Correct.
Yes.
So yeah, the output for this question would be, as we have already discussed, it would be green. Remember, we are not changing the value. sorry, we are not changing the reference. We are just changing the value at that memory location. So yeah, answer would be.
So constant is freezing the memory location. We can
Correct.
always change the values over there.
Exactly. But in case, you know, you are, let's say this was an, what I say, object. But in case you put some value, let's say 5 here, or let's say 6 here, or let's say a string value, then you cannot do anything. You can even say that those are acting as constant value because there is nothing you can change in that.
Since this is just like a dictionary, then only then we can change, right?
Yeah, objects references, object values, their properties can change. Yes.
Can change. Okay.
And this function is a predefined function over here.
This function?
Yes.
Yeah, just like in Python, you use def keyword. In JavaScript, you have to use function.
Okay.
You can change the array also. You have defined a variable, a constant variable, and you have assigned array, then you can change the content of the array also. I mean, it should be, if it's mutable object, then you can change that object. But if it's not mutable, then you cannot do anything.
So can I add more elements to the object? Yes, you can definitely add. This is what we are doing here. We defined it as a constant object, but we are still adding one more property or one more key value pair, you can say. The key is change color and the value to that is function. So you can. Okay. Shall we move to the next category? Yes, shall we move to the next set of questions? If everyone of you is okay now. Okay. Yeah. So which of the following is not a front-end framework? Okay, there are just 2 questions. Which of the following is not a front-end framework for web development? Remember, not a front-end. So definitely Flask we have used extensively in Matter. And which of the following is not a backend framework?
Vue.js.
It will be something that we are going to use throughout in this course. Which of the following is correct regarding JavaScript? I guess this is a repetitive question.
First 2 options.
Yeah, so it can manipulate the DOM. We have already discussed how it can be done. Means, yeah, we'll see in the upcoming live coding sessions as well that how to manipulate DOM using JavaScript. JavaScript is a programming language, correct? It cannot manipulate the DOM. So this is just contradictory of the first option. So that means first 2 options are correct. The rest 2 are wrong. What does AJAX stand for? So it stands for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. And we discussed something called SPA, I guess in the first category, AQ 1.1, if I'm not wrong. So AJAX play a major part while developing SPAs. Well, there are multiple ways of achieving AJAX. There is a traditional way of using XML HTTP object, request object, XML HTTP request object. But we'll be using some advanced version of AJAX, that is fetch API. You can even use Axios as well, but fetch is something that we'll be using in this course. So asynchronous JavaScript and XML is basically the full form or something that AJAX stands for. All right, so we are done with all of the activity questions for this week 1. Do you have any questions? Yes, anybody having any questions?
Sir, this 1.5, the change color.
1.5, yeah. Yes, please.
I'm not still getting it, sir, because now object dot change color, change color is the key, right?
Yeah, correct.
But we are printing out console.log object.color.
Yeah. So see, what we did is, using this change color, we created one more property inside that object. What this property is doing, this is creating a function. And what this function do? This function accepts one parameter or one value as a parameter, and whatever that it gets, it basically just assigns it to what? To this color property. So what we did in line number 3 is we invoked this function or we invoked this property in order to change the another property of this object, that is color. We passed green in it. This color gets green. This dot color will be, replaced with obj.color. So obj.color means you are trying to change the value of this color property. So it will become green now. And what you are printing on the screen is the color property of this object. What is the color property of this object? Previously, it was red, but if we would have not done that, it would have remained as red. But this time, it has been changed to green due to this function call. So if you would not have this third line here as part of the program, the answer would remain red because you have created the function, but you have never invoked it. But at line number 3, you are invoking that function.
Okay, sir. Now I get it. Yeah. Okay. This color is equal to color. That portion changes. It's for changing the color key of that.
Correct.
Value of that.
The value to that color property. Yes.
Okay. Okay, sir.
So remember, if you will not invoke this function will not be invoked.
Okay.
If you want
okay,
to.
Sir, I get it.
Okay. So if no
So
one
this
is having,
object is in JSON format, key value pair.
well, I would not like to call it JSON because JSON has some other rules, some other specification system. I won't say it as JSON.
Okay, so every key value pair we cannot call it as a JSON format.
In JSON, all of the keys, they must be double quoted strings. There are some other things as well. So yeah, I would not call it as JSON.
Okay, sir. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, at least till 1.6 now, I would like to take a small break of 2 minutes. And then, yeah, we'll start with the practice assignment. So, yeah, just take a small break of 2 minutes.
Sir, I have one doubt in the graded assignment.
Graded. Am I audible?
Hello, am I audible?
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. Sir has taken a break.
Okay, so I'm back. Okay, though the
Sir, you're
session has
not
not been
audible.
over. Am I audible now?
Yes, Abhishek.
Yeah, I saw in the chat that is the session over. No, it's not yet over. Chandrasekhar, I guess I'm audible.
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah. So Chandrasekhar, I would suggest, let me just type it in the chat for them.
Sir, I have a doubt in graded assignment.
Okay, in graded assignment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what type of doubt is this? Is it a conceptual doubt or?
Sir, I mean, yeah, I think it would reveal the answer, but I guess, I mean, because it's a coded snippet, right? So anybody can run the code. I just want to understand, like on question number 6, there is a object defined, and the object contains a function, an arrow function kind of.
One second.
So
question number
6.
6. Okay. Yeah.
So I just wanted to understand, why would it not work when we call the function in the object? It doesn't change the name. So
I'm very sorry, Vipin. I would not be able to discuss this question at this moment. I hope you understand that this is a graded question and there are some protocols that we have to follow.
Yes.
So you will have to wait till 15. I'm
Okay.
really sorry for that.
No issues, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, Chandrasekhar, are you able to hear us right now?
Yes,
I guess we are properly audible. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Nice.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. I'll again share my screen and we'll get back to the practice questions. So, okay. Again, I would encourage everyone to come forward and take or participate in the discussions that we are having right now. It is good to see that most of you are participating in this session, and hope we can maintain the same kind of participation in the upcoming sessions. So yeah, here is the first question, the practice question. Which of the following statements is not true regarding JavaScript language? So JavaScript always requires a browser for its execution. Is this statement true?
No, sir.
Yeah, this statement is not true. The reason? Why? Any example? We have already discussed one such example in the earlier part of this session. Okay, remember we discussed about Node.js, that JavaScript can also be used in the backend to develop the backends for applications using Node.js. That means we are able to make it work even outside the browsers. So what is the browser? Browser is just an environment, a runtime environment for JavaScript. Right? That it basically supports some APIs or provides some APIs. So JavaScript always requires a browser for its execution. That's not a correct statement, but this is a correct statement in the context of this question. If we talk about some other statements or the remaining statements, JavaScript cannot be invoked using command line. Oh, okay, all right. This is not the correct answer, definitely. But yeah, JavaScript cannot be invoked using command line. So what do you think?
We can invoke using command line.
How?
On console, we see the output. I haven't tried, but
Again, Node.js is the best example for that. You can even run your script using Node.js, or there is an interactive interpreter that Node.js provides. So you can use any of that in order to use it as a command. So again, this is also a wrong option. So this is also not true. This is also not true. The third option, JavaScript always requires a document context in order to be executed. Now this document context comes into play when we are using it inside a browser. So that means it indirectly says that JavaScript always is executed inside the browser. It is just a contradictory option for the first one, or I would say, just a matching option, indirect matching option for the option 1. So again, this option 3 is also not correct. So that means all of these statements that are given here, they are not true, they are false. That's why all of the above is the correct answer.
So I'm having doubt regarding the third one.
Yeah.
You said that that is JavaScript required a DOM API, no? So
yeah,
document context, isn't it contradictory in that sense?
See, this document context or this document API is provided by browser. But if you are running your JavaScript code outside a browser, you won't have access to these APIs.
So as we do not need browser, that's why we are saying that.
Yeah, exactly. Browser is not at all needed in order to execute a JavaScript program. Again, we have been emphasizing on Node.js once again. Yeah, so that's basically an answer to this question as well. That if in case you are working with Node.js, you won't have the access to document API.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so what will be the output of on the console if the following JavaScript program is executed? What do you think? What will happen?
So now here this we define using a let, and that has a function.
So let is having a block level scope.
So
and this is a local block here, or we can say a local scope. That means this variable X cannot be used or cannot be accessed outside this scope. And we are trying to do it. That means it is going to give us an error. So it is going to give us a reference error. Undefined
yeah, that one. I want to know in what context undefined will be used.
Undefined is something, well, I would like to, talk about a little bit about hosting here. So what happens is that JavaScript uses a concept called hosting. So as part of hosting, what it does is that JavaScript automatically or implicitly moves the declarations of all of the variables to the top of their scopes. Please note my statement that it automatically moves the declarations of the variables on the top of their scopes. That means, suppose you have written some lines of code, let's say 4 lines of code, and after that you have declared a variable using var, where x equals to 10, or let's say something else. So what happens is, if you will try to print the value of x as the very first line in your program, let me just try to do that. Is there any online JavaScript program that I can use? I can use this. I don't want to use Applet right now, as I just want to give a quick demo. What happens? So suppose what I'm doing is I am saying that console.log. Yeah, console.log this variable x equals to 10. Now, what output do you expect? Let's say if I try to run this program, do you expect an error or what?
It will be undefined.
It will be undefined. Correct. Why? What happened? Because as I said, that JavaScript automatically moves the declarations of the variables to the top of their scopes. So if I say that variable x equals to 10, the initialization has been done here. But if we talk about declaration, the declaration has been done even without executing this statement, that is welcome to programs. And when this, this declaration happens, the default value, the by default value that all of those variables get, it is basically undefined. So that's why until and unless the initialization of the variable has not been reached in the code execution, in the program execution, they will be having value undefined. But now if you will ask me that what happens with let, what happens with pods, because if I simply change this where to let here, you are going to get a different type of error. You are going to get a reference error, but please also read the error message. It will say that it is not initialized yet, something like that. So you can see that, okay, so X is basically not defined. So what happened is, of course, it would have moved the declarations to the top of their scopes. That means when this console.log statement executes, it would have already declared X variable. But what happens in case of let and const is that they are basically kept in a special type of zone that is known as temporal dead zone. So there is a terminology called temporal dead zone. What happens, or what this temporal dead zone is, it is basically the time duration between the memory allocation of the program, of the JavaScript program, till the code reaches the initialization or the declaration of that particular value. Right? Let me just repeat my statement once again. It is basically the portion between the memory allocation of JavaScript program and the point where code execution reaches the declaration of that particular value. That means if I would have done something like okay. So now what type of error do you expect? I will not be able to basically run it. Let me just comment out this line. Now, what do you expect? What's going to be the output? Is it going to be an error or what? It's going to be undefined, right?
Undefined.
Yes.
It's going to be undefined. So now, I would again like to come back to the term temporal dead zone. See, whenever a JavaScript program is executed, so what happens is it is executed inside the execution context. And execution context basically has two phases. One is memory allocation phase. The second is code execution phase. What happens in memory allocation phase is that all of the variables in that particular scope, right? I'm talking about global scope. So when the JavaScript program runs, it basically first picks all of the variables that are defined inside the global scope. It allocates memory for them. But since it is allocating memory for them, it assigns or it initializes those variables with a default value called undefined. Right? It initializes all those variables with the value undefined using memory allocation phase. And they get their original value during code execution phase whenever the code execution reaches that statement, at whatever statement they are being initialized. Right? But in case of let and const, they are basically kept inside temporal dead zone. That means those variables cannot be accessed before they are actually declared. Memory allocation has already been happened for those variables too, just that they are not accessible. Maybe I could show you the browser as well. I would have to again start a live server in the VS Code. It would take some time, but I guess let me try. I'll share my entire screen. And just quickly create two files. And I'll create one more file, index.js. Right, so what I have done is I have done nothing. I have just created a index.html file and I have embedded this JavaScript file. Okay. Now I'll just write that program here. What will I do is I'll just or maybe say console.log x I'll do it this way. So it should be x. So what will I do is I'll just start this live server here. So, okay, you can see that there is nothing on the web page because my index.html file has that. What will I do is I'll just go to inspect here. I'll just put it here. I'll go to sources. One second. Just give me a minute.
I think you want to go to the console.
No, just a minute. Okay, maybe I'll just open it once again. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So you can just ignore this HTML text as of now. Does it mean anything? So yeah, what I am going to do here is I am going to, let's say, put a debugger here. Let's say at this line. I'll just remove from here. I'll put it here. Like debugger means that I want to execute my code line by line. So I have put this debugger here. That means my code, this entire JavaScript code will be executed, but it won't be. It will stop its execution from this line, from fourth line. That means it will be executed till line 3. And what we have till line 3, we have pretty much nothing. Right. So what will happen in whatever execution it is going to have is it will just go through that memory allocation phase, and we'll see that what happens. So I'll just refresh this page. Debugger, second, it's a spot. Not able to run it. Okay, I'm not sure that there seems to be some configuration issue with my system right now. Okay, maybe I'll just try to explain you here itself. So basically what I was trying to explain you that what happens in case of let and const is before even executing the first line of the entire JavaScript program, the program has to go through a phase of memory allocation, where what it does is it picks all of the variables that are defined in the global scope. And what it does is it initializes all of those variables with a default value called undefined. Now, this is true for variable X, or I would say this is even true for let and const. Just that the values of those variables, let and const, the variables declared using let and const, they won't be available to use for the programmers before the actual code execution reaches their declaration. That means, let's say, if the memory allocation has already been happened, the code execution phase begins. This line is executed. It says that welcome to program is. And now when it comes here, when this line is executed, let X, that means now the programmer has the access to use this variable called X in their program. Before that, if they will try to use it, they will get an error because those variables are inside temporal dead zone. They are not available to use. The moment code execution executes the statement where those variables are declared or initialized, the variables declared using const and let, they are now available to use for the programmer. But at the same time, if we are talking about variables declared using var, there is a slight change in whatever I have said. In case of var, there is nothing known as temporal dead zone in case of var. When the memory allocation phase happens, when it is completed and the code execution phase begins, the variables declared using var have their default value initialized with undefined, and until and unless the code doesn't reach the initialization of the variables declared using var, they will carry the value undefined. But the moment the line where those variables are initialized, then the undefined value will be overwritten by whatever they were initialized. Just to demonstrate this, I have done something like this here. I'll just change this let to var. What will happen is that firstly, we will get the value undefined, and after that, we are going to get the value 10. So if I click on run here, I should get undefined first and then. The reason is again same. Memory allocation phase happened. It initializes the value with undefined. After that, in code execution, when we came here, when the code execution phase reached the statement line number 6, it overwrites the value undefined by this 10. The next line, you try to print the value of X, it shows 10. But at the same time, if I'll just change it to let, you won't be able to access it at this place. At line number 5, it will give you an error because those variables are present inside temporal dead zone and they cannot be accessed. But the moment they are initialized or they are declared in the program, remember, I have not initialized them right now. I have just declared them. The moment code execution reaches here, then they are available to use for the programmers and they will have their default value as undefined. So remember, again, I'll get undefined. I have not initialized this. This is still declared, not initialized. So I am getting undefined. So this is how let, const, and var works. The entire JavaScript program is basically executed in 2 phases. The first phase is memory allocation phase, where the memory for all of the variables that are defined inside global scope is allocated. The next phase is code execution phase. It is also known as thread of execution, where the JavaScript code is executed line by line. Are you able to get something?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I completely forgot that why did we start that discussion? Okay. So yeah, here we were basically asking that what happens that is basically happening. So yeah, we are getting reference here. So Joyce, do you had I guess you had some question. I forgot what the question.
Yes, sir. I was asking the role for undefined. That's when all this discussion started.
Okay. All right. So undefined is just a value. That means a variable has not been initialized yet.
I get it, sir. I get it. Yeah. Thank you.
I got it.
I'll just change the system configuration and maybe we'll discuss it in more details in the next session. I'll show you in the sources tab that how this all call stack works, how the scoping works. Maybe we can discuss it. Yeah. So what is AJAX? So AJAX is an acronym for asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Is this statement true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The second statement is, it is a technology used to send requests to the server without reloading the page via JavaScript. Is that statement true?
Yes, sir. True.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this statement is true. Only XML data can be transported using AJAX.
No.
So yeah, when there was a trend of XML HTTP request object, we used to work with XML a lot. We used to rely heavily on XML, but now JSON has completely come into the existence, and JSON is used all along. So that's not true. It can still be used, but it says that only. So that's why this statement is not true. So yeah, the first two options are basically the correct options for this question. Yeah. Fourth question. So consider the following variable declaration like x. What will be printed on the console for console.log x? We already have a large discussion, a huge discussion on this topic. That the moment code execution reaches this statement, that means the variable has now been declared inside the program. They will be available to the programmer for use, and what will be their by default value when they are not initialized by the programmer explicitly? They will carry undefined. Right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So consider the following code snippet. Const x equals to 14, x equals to 15. What will be the output of the statement console.log x? What do you think?
It will
Type
throw an
error.
error.
Type error, definitely, because what we are doing here is we are trying to change the reference of a const variable. Previously, it was pointing to some memory location that was having value 14. Now we are completely changing the reference to point to a different memory location which is having value 15. Okay. What will be the output of the statement console.log obj.color? I guess this already been discussed.
Syntax.
Okay. Yeah, so this time the function is itself a part of the object declaration. Last time we added it explicitly. So yes, the answer would be what?
Syntax error.
Why? Why do you think syntax error?
It will be yellow.
Yeah, it should be yellow. Was there any specific reason for saying syntax error?
I haven't covered the video. I thought because it is inside. So give it error.
Okay, no issues, no issues. Yeah, so that's what I was saying, that there is a slight difference in this code example and what we saw in, I guess, in one of the activity questions. Here, the second key value pair, this function is defined while declaring this object obj, but in the previous question, we did it explicitly. After declaring the object, after initializing it, we added it later on. So it will be yellow. Which of the following is our correct ways to define a function in JavaScript? Okay, so this might be an advanced question for you to answer right now. It is having some component of arrow functions as well.
So all of them.
Yeah, basically all of them are correct. This is correct. This is also correct. This is also correct. And this is also correct. So what happens in case of arrows functions is that if there is just one statement that you have inside the entire function body, you don't even need to use braces and you don't even need to use return statement like what we are doing in second and fourth options. So it will automatically be expected as a return x plus y, and here it will be return x multiply x. So no need to put this curly braces and return if the function body just has one statement. So we'll see it in the live coding sessions. So yeah, with what will be the background color of an element having ID div1 in the rendered web page corresponding to the document?
It would be red.
So it would be
Red.
Why do you think it would be red?
Inline CSS has highest priority.
Sorry?
Inline CSS is having highest priority.
This is JavaScript.
No, but in style we are writing, no? Style height 100 pixels.
Yeah.
That is inline.
No, this
CSS.
is JavaScript. Remember, JavaScript can even override inline CSS. See, this is written with the help of document API.
Okay.
That means you are trying to get that element and whatever its properties are, you are trying to override.
So if now JavaScript and inline CSS both are there, then then which one is having highest priority? JavaScript.
JavaScript. If JavaScript code Okay, let me first try to clear this question. After that, I'll come to your question. So what happens in this question is the moment this DOM rendering happens, the moment browser starts parsing this HTML document, what it says is that there is something JavaScript code written in this document. It tries to execute this code and it says that I try to get an element having ID diff1. But since the code execution has not reached this phase yet, right? It happens sequentially. The browser rendering happens sequentially. It's not like after this statement we completely, will lose these statements and will jump here. No, it happens sequentially. So it tries to get an element having ID diff1. But since this code has not been rendered yet by the browser, has not been read by the browser yet, so this code won't make any sense. Right? There will be this code will have no effect on this program because an element having ID diff1 has not been mounted onto the DOM. It will only come into the effect, or it will only affect this program if this code is written after this diff. After the browser has read this diff code, after that, if this code is written, then this code will bring some effects into this program or onto the web. Otherwise, it will. So the answer to this question will be right, but it has a different reason. The reason is that when this code will be executed, this element has now not been mounted onto the DOM yet. So that's why it won't be able to get any such element having ID diff. So that's why it won't have any. Now, if I come to your question, Chandrasekhar, that let's say this code would have been written after this div, then the color, the background color of this div1 would have been changed to yellow.
Yes, sir. Understood.
CSS and JavaScript have a difference. So if we talk about CSS, yes, inline CSS has the highest precedence. That can again be, overridden by using important keywords in CSS itself. But yeah, a JavaScript can override.
Yes, sir.
So here, what is happening is, what will be the background color of an element having ID diff after 6 seconds? So what set interval does is, whatever code is written inside that, it is basically a loop, and that set of code or those set of statements, they get executed after this interval of time. It accepts the value in milliseconds. So if it is getting a value 1000, that means it's 1000 milliseconds, or we can say 1 second. That means this code that is written inside this set interval body, this will be executed after each second. And the question asks that what will be the background after 6 seconds. So let's see what is going to happen. We are having a dictionary, or we can say an object, which is having 3 properties, color 1, 2, 3, having values red, green, yellow. We are also having 2 variables. One is I, whose value is 1. The color is null. Remember, null is the value that we explicitly set. Right? Undefined is something that automatically the variable gets if they are not initialized. Right? So null is being set explicitly by the program. So I is 1, color is null. What happens is after 1 second, when we get into this block, the value of I is 1. So 1 modulo division 2, is it equals to 0 or is it not equals to 0?
Not equal to 0.
Not equal to 0. That means this condition will become true. And what will happen is the value of this color will become colors dot color 1. That means red. Since this statement has been executed, else if and else won't be executed, what will happen is, so see, this time what we are doing is we are trying to get that element using JavaScript, using document API, and then we are changing its background color. So its background color will get changed. Why? Because this JavaScript code is being executed after this div element has been mounted. Okay. So I guess that will answer your question.
Yeah.
So now the color has become red. The next time, again, after waiting for 1 more second, we again get into this block. The value of I is changing. 1 second. Yeah, the value of I is also changing. I missed that statement. So previously it was 1. Now it has become 2. So we get into this block once again. So 2 modulo division 2 not equals to 0. That's false. 2 modulo division 4. Is it equals to 0? 2 modulo division 4.
No, sir.
Yes. Again, would you like to confirm? 2 modulo division 4. What is the answer? It won't be 0, right?
Multiples of 4, no? 2 will not be there.
So remainder will be 2.
Yeah.
So it will get into the else part, and what it will do is color dot colors 3. That means it will become yellow. After, okay, the value has now become 3. Again, if we will get into it, the next time 3 modular division 2 not equals to 0, this condition becomes true, and we again get value red. Next time the value becomes 4, we again get here 4 modular division 4, it becomes 0. So this time the color 2 is green, so it becomes green. Fifth time the value is 5, and 5 modular division 2 not equals to 0. That means again it gets true, and we get red as the value. Then 6, the sixth time we are getting into this block. 6 modular division 2 not equals to 0. This is false. 6 modular division 4, is it equals to 0?
No.
No. 6, okay, then we will get into the else part, and whatever the color's value is, it is yellow. Color's 3 value is yellow. And this will be assigned as the background color for this div. So that means the answer should be yellow.
So what is this 1000 here? It's an increment
This is the value
or it's
in milliseconds. After
means by this value it will increment.
Yeah, so what happens is that after waiting for this interval of time, that means after waiting for 1000 milliseconds, this code will be executed. So after every 1000 milliseconds, this code will be executed.
Can we make it stop at particular instance?
Yeah,
of
sure.
time?
You can do that as
well. Okay.
You can use clear
this
interval.
is an example of event loop.
No. You can say, yeah, means event loop also comes into play because we are using set interval. So they are basically executed in a separate thread in the web API's component. So yeah, you can say in some sense, this is an example of event. Event loop comes into the picture.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So remember that we are basically not stopping. We are not pausing this interval. So that means it will keep going. It will keep going. It will never stop. So the background colors, they will keep changing. In case we want to stop it at some point, we need to use clear interval method. Like we are using set interval. In the same way, we use clear interval.
Can I use break here? Will that work?
No. Break is
it's
used
not
for
a loop, no? It's not a loop.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I have a question on that, on the last question.
Yeah, please.
So, so the loop starts at, I mean, this code executes at every 1000 interval, right? So does it also execute at 0 timestamp?
It basically waits for this time interval first and then starts executing. So firstly, a wait of this interval. That means after waiting for 1000 milliseconds, it will start its first execution.
So after 1 second, the first execution will start.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So we are almost done with this practice component as well. We are done with the activity component as well. Okay. There was one second. Okay, so there is no programming assignment for week 1. Got it. So there was one programming assignment that I guess we somehow forgot to publish. Okay. Okay, I'll do it right after this session. So there is also one programming assignment that you would already have seen in week 2. I hope it is available there. Yeah. So for example, this cafe management problem is there for week 2. In the same way, we have a simple interest, compound interest problem for week 1. I'll make it available right after this session so that you can try it out as well. In case you are having any issues, we can discuss on it in the next session or in the discussion forum as well. Okay, it's not there. I'll do it. Okay. Yeah, so it's 11 a.m. as well. All right, so this is what we had planned for the today's session. In the next session, hopefully we'll start with some live coding exercises as well. That will depend that we can either use JavaScript or VS Code as a coding ID, or we can either use the applet as well. That we'll see that what suits the best. The time we'll work on it. So does anybody has any questions so far? Whatever we had discussed today.
Assignments are graded or not?
Sorry?
The programming assignments are graded?
No, they are not graded. They are just for your practice purpose.
Okay.
Yes, so anybody having any questions till now? If there are no more questions, I guess that's a good time to close this session.
Sir, just to clarify, there are no OPPs here, right? Just the final project.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, and it will be like the similar kind of approach as MAD1, right? Like,
Did you complete your MAD1 in Genta?
yeah.
It will be based on that, yes, on top of. Okay. Still a bit confused about the template thing, but I'll try to rewatch the video. Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll fix my system configuration and I'll show you whatever I was saying. Basically, I couldn't show you in the browser. That would have been more clear. I'll just fix it and I'll show you in the next session. Okay. All right. So is it a good time to close the session then if you guys are having no more questions?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming into this session. Hope we'll meet again next week, and yeah, we'll have some quality discussions as well. So yeah, one advice I would like to give all of you to please start working on JavaScript, like start getting familiar with its syntax and how does it work.
Thank you, sir. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Yeah, have a good day. Have a good weekend too.